Hello learners, welcome to this SWAM course on preparation of research proposal in social sciences. Today we will move on to discuss another components of research proposal in lecture number 7. So let us begin and have a discussion. For today's lecture, the key learning themes: first is hypothesis, second is operational definition of key terms, variables, methodology, tools or instruments to be used, data collection and data analysis. Today in the present lecture we will discuss all these things as a component of a research proposal. As we have discussed in the previous lecture, some components which are at the starting, and now these are the components which are followed by that components. So let us discuss all these components one by one in a brief. First is hypothesis. You can see clearly a hypothesis is a conjectural statement of the relation between two or more variables. This is very interesting. In a research, when you are going to propose some study, you form some certain hypothesis. There are some hypotheses that you make as a conjectural statement which connects the dot between what you are thinking and how it can be done. A hypothesis is not a proven fact. It is not a proven fact, but a proposed explanation that can be tested through research. Here you have to understand this it very specifically, that hypothesis is something which is subject to be tested. You are going to test that whether it can be done or not, and what you are thinking you are framing in your mind with the sense of doing something. It explains the relationship between those variables that can be empirically tested. This is another most important thing about hypothesis, that when you form a hypothesis, it is very important to understand one thing, that whether the framed hypothesis can be empirically tested or not. Because ultimately what you have designed in a hypothesis, you have to test it, that whether this is true or not. So be sure that whatever hypothesis you are preparing, it should be empirically tested. Next, it must be verifiable. It must be verifiable with the help of tools and techniques what you are going to utilize in the research proposal. So be sure that whatever hypothesis you are preparing, it should be verifiable in nature. Next, it must be formulated in simple understandable terms, as I have already discussed in the previous lectures, that when you form your hypothesis, be very simple, and not only in hypothesis, in other components also. Make it simple, straightforward, and use the research language to make it more effective. It should correspond with existing knowledge. This is a very fundamental thing that a researcher should understand before making hypothesis, that when you are making any kind of a hypothesis, be very clear and have a precise understanding about one thing, that it should correspond to the existing knowledge, because it helps you in making and developing theories forward. So be very sure about this thing. Next is, hypothesis is a singular word, whereas plural is hypothesis. You can see here the pronunciation looks very similar, but there is a difference in a spelling. So be very cautious. When you have one hypothesis, it will be singular, and when you have more than one hypothesis, it will be hypothesis. Next, let us see some example of hypothesis. Students who create and follow a study schedule, will achieve higher grades than those who study irregularly. See, here one interesting thing, that as a researcher we have to understand, that whenever you are proposing a study, there are some certain fundamental thoughts that you contain within, that this is happening due to this, and I am going to explore so and so. So this is a kind of a hypothesis that has been established between students' achievement and their study habits. Hypothesis 2. Effective time management skills have a positive impact on students' overall academic performances. Here we have to understand this thing, that there are several kind of a hypothesis that we will discuss in the upcoming lectures, but At initial level, researcher does not go for specificity, but he or she is bothered about the cause and effect, that what are some certain concerns which are provoking something to happen, and that makes a relationship, that I said conjecture, that make a relationship between the things which are affecting something to occur. Likewise, here you can see effective time management means the student, those who are having good time management related to their skills, have a positive impact over academic performance. This is a tentative assumption, this is a tentative thought of a researcher which will be tested further, and it is mentioned in the form of a hypothesis. Next is operational definition of key terms. This is also important, and it makes a very deeper sense for a researcher to make and communicate about his variables, about the key terms, what he or she is coining in some certain research. You can see here operationalization means defining the term in a measurable and relevant manner. This is, you can understand it very simply, that whatever you are thinking in a research, for example anything, any variable, any trait, what you are thinking in a research, that how you have to define it in your particular research, within your context, that makes a sense with operational definition of key terms, transforming abstract concept into measurable observations. Again, it makes a sense that whatever is abstract, abstract means which is not understood by the person in a way as it should be, or it is not concrete to the system, you have to make it measurable. Measurable in a sense that how you are going to measure some particular term or variable in your research. It ensures you are measuring what you intend to measure. This is another important thing which makes a researcher very focused, and not only focus to the point that yes, as a researcher what I mean to do, this is reflected by my operational definition. Communicate clearly what key terms mean in a particular study. For example, you can see achievement has a definition, a standard definition, but when you are doing a particular study which involves achievements of the learner, then it is a responsibility of the learner to define and make sense of achievement in his or her study. That is important, that as a researcher, what you mean achievement in your study, you have to identify and you have to operationalize it. So that is what operational definition of key terms means, and it's a very important component of the research proposal which actually gives the direction to the proposal. Direction in a sense that yes, what you are thinking, what you have measured, and in what way you are going to define it. So please be very particular with defining your key terms in a very appropriate manner. Next is how to operationalize key term. This is a issue. So let us see some example here. Study habit. We all know what is study habit, and there are general definition of study habits. For example, it refers to the consistent routines and practices learners employ to facilitate effective learning. Simple definition that what study habit means. But here one important thing you have to understand as a researcher, that when you are planning and preparing your research proposal, you have to make it more operationalized with reference to your research. You cannot simply write that study habit means this and this. It is fine that a study habit is already having a standard, it's already having a concept, but what it means, it means what you refer as a study habit. And you can see here in a present study, study habit refers to the score obtained by the students on the questionnaire that measures time spent for studying, note taking and reading. We will discuss this questionnaire and other things in our upcoming lecture, but here for a while we have to understand this, that in any research, if you are dealing with a study habit and you want to measure it or assess the study habit, you will make a questionnaire and study over some sample. So you have to make it very, very clear that this is the study habit, what I mean in my research. So I hope it is clear. So let us move forward. Test yourself. This is small activity that we will do here. You can take your copy and pen and do it with me. Consider a key term in a research topic. Let us understand this. Let us consider a key term, a student. We all know what we mean by a student. Generally, a student referred to a person formally engaged in learning, especially one enrolled in school, college or university. Now, challenge comes how to operationalize in a study. So you can just operationalize it by your own as an activity. I will just show an answer to you, and meanwhile you write your answer. One interesting thing I am sharing to you, that there is a difference between learner and student. As a researcher, you have to understand there is a difference between learner and student. Everybody is a learner. Who is learning something is a learner, but a person who is enrolled in a formal setup somewhere in a school, college or university is a student, So let us see here that how to operationalize this in a research. In the context of the present study, the term student, you can see on the screen, shall refer to individuals enrolled in class 9 and 10 during the 2025-2026 academic year at XYZ school. You can see here few fundamental things I have used as a research language also and a conceptual framework also, that I refer to the student which are enrolled in class 9 and 10 during so and so academic session of so and so school. So please be very, very specific while you define your operational definition, because the moment you define your operational definition, it gives you the wings that yes, I am going in so and so direction. You have confined and declared that this is going to be a student in my particular research. So this is how we do operational definition of key terms. Let us move forward. Next component is variable. I have given a number which will be helpful for you all to understand. Variable is component number 10. A variable, as the name implies, is something that varies, which will have different value, which acquire different values. According to Kurlinger 1986, a variable is a property that has different values. According to Postman and Egan, a variable is a characteristics or attributes that can have several values. For example, the number of items that an individual solve on a particular test, the speed with which we respond to a signal, IQ and level of anxiety are some examples of variables that are commonly employed in psychological research. Here we have to understand it that there are many things that a researcher wants to do, but at some point of time you have to limit yourself and define your variable that I am going to do these things in that manner. So variables are the important components which provides you the support and help in terms of defining your overall research, because what you are going to do over some certain variable. Variable in research is a characteristic, trait or conditions that can exist in different amount or types and can be measured or observed. This is most important, that variable is something, even though it varies, it acquires different values, but it can be measured or observed, and since it is measurable and observed, it helps you in making the meaningful interpretation out of your research. Research study analyze to understand relationship patterns and effect. It also helps you to analyze the relationship patterns and effect. As I have discussed, it helps you in making meaningful interpretations, and since these are measurable and key terms of your research, it gives a deeper emphasis over what you obtained. Variable is a term frequently used in a research project. It is pertinent, definely and identified the variable. Some variables in social sciences. Here are few examples that I am just showing you. There are several classification of variables in research based on their trait, criteria, roles and the nature of the data they represent and the potential for manipulation. There is a several classification and a spectrum which makes that these are the categories of variable, and you classify this variable on the basis of above things that I have discussed. For example, demographic variables, gender, educational level, marital status. Psychological variables, stress, anxiety, emotional intelligence. Some academic variables, academic performance, class engagement, learning outcomes. Social variables, peer influence, family support, cultural background and community involvement. So, these are some variables that I have just shown you, that these are the variables you have to identify in your research and define also, and these are helpful in making a sense out of your research. Component 11, methodology. This is the core heart of your research, because as a researcher, what you are trying to do, the execution part of your research belongs to this section, that this is the plan I am going to do, in what ways and how. Methodology is a component of the proposal that outlines the overall plan and specific methods that will be used to conduct the study. It explains approaches to the research, design of the research, data collection method, as well as think of it as the blueprint of your study. It shows what you will do, how you will do and why you are doing it in that particular way. So, it is a overall very main component of your research proposal, and be very particular about this thing, that this certain kind of research can be done by certain kind of methodology that we will discuss in the later classes. But here you have to understand that the moment you start making research proposal, you have to have idea about methodology. Several type of research designs are used as per the requirement of the study. Some example I have given. There are many kind of research designs, but some very prominent and frequently used are experimental research, correlational studies and descriptive research design. Tools. Tools are the another very important component, because this serves as a support system to the researcher, that how you will achieve your certain objectives, in what way you will achieve. In research, a tool or instrument refer to the device, method or techniques used to collect data from participants. A tool may be developed by the researcher. Here it is very important, please look it very carefully. It may be developed by the researcher. Second, adapted with some changes or adopted as it is. There are some certain cases. For example, if you are going for some particular study and that study has already been done and some specific tool have been developed on some certain variable which is standardized and usable, reusable actually I would say, then if it suits to your research, you can utilize it as it is. Or sometime you need some minor modification related to language or some other things as per the demand of your study. So, you can adapt it with some changes, and sometime you need to develop your own research tool, because it may be case that your research have a very unique context, dimensions and variables which you are going to do. So, it is a responsibility of a researcher to develop a research tool, or if suits they can adapt or adopt. Some of the common tools are, these are some common tools which are very frequently used. One of the very famous tool generally we have is questionnaire, checklist, intelligence test commonly known as IQ test, personality test, and rating scales. There are many tools which a researcher develops or adapts as per the requirement. These are some common tools, and as a researcher you have to be having a clear cut idea about research tool so that you can justify this component in your research proposal. Next is data collection. Data collection is also a very important component of the research proposal. I have given it number 13 just for the sake of understanding. Data collection is one of the most practical and challenging step in the research process, because I would just give an example here. See, when you are preparing to make a curry, and when you are visualizing that I am going to make a curry, I have this material, I will do this, I will cook a very tasty curry. This all are the theoretical backgrounds and assumptions that you make. But when you actually go to the place and cook something, it gives you real life challenges which maybe you not have imagined, because there are certain problems that emerge during the real activity. Same thing happens here. When you plan the things that this is my objective, this is my hypothesis, this is my methodology, and now I have a tool and I am going for data collection, real time picture comes here how you are collecting data. And that is why I have said it's the most challenging step in the research process, because you have to go to the field. And it's a systematic, planned, focused, subject oriented process of gathering information from various sources to answer research question, test hypothesis, and achieve the objectives of the study. This is a thing where you do the things very systematically, very planned. Planned means you already have a pre-plan of the things, that how I am going to collect data. You have identified your sample, population, all these things, and then moving subject oriented, that I have to collect data from certain person, I will collect only with that certain person or certain identified group. Example you can see here, data will be collected using a structured questionnaire administered over 100 high school students. The response will be compiled and analyzed using SPSS software. That it's an optional thing I have just mentioned here, that somehow you collect the data and then you move towards the process of data analysis. So as a researcher, be very objective in terms of having ideas of data collection, because if it's vague, you can go another way in terms of collecting your data, and that can hamper your research objective and ultimately findings of the study. Next is data analysis, component number 14. Data analysis is nothing, it's a process of organizing, interpreting and examining collected data to answer research question. What your research question asks, you give that answer with the help of data analysis. Test hypothesis. For example, in a research generally we make lots of hypotheses that this is happening because of this, this is happening because of this. So actually when you do data analysis, after collecting the data, it gives you the real answer that why this is happening, reason is this one, and draw meaningful conclusions. Draw meaningful conclusions. And here I have classified the categories of data that you will encounter while going to the data collection. Mostly if you can have a quantitative data, you have to analyze the data accordingly, that we will again discuss in the upcoming lectures. If you have a qualitative data, there are the different ways of analyzing the qualitative data, and not only ways of analyzing, you have a different methods to collect qualitative data. And third is mixed category. Sometimes you have quantitative and qualitative both kind of a data, and as a researcher be very focused over these things, that what is the nature of your data you are going to collect and you are going to analyze. So look into all these things very seriously, that yes, this is my data, whether it is quantitative, qualitative or mixed, and go accordingly for its analysis. And in a research proposal, when you make data analysis or the section of data collection, you are tentative in nature. You don't know what kind of a nature of data you will actually have. For example, when in a data analysis part you write that I will use a parametric test, it may be case that your data obtained may not satisfy the normality condition. So do not become so optimistic in terms of writing this thing. Simply you can mention that data will be analyzed as per the nature of data obtained. Concluding discussions for today's lecture. Total 14 components we have discussed. Total 14 components, and in all these 14 components I would say that few components are very restricted in terms of order and few are flexible. Sometimes it depends upon the demands of the institution or funding agency that in what way, in what order they are asking to make you proposal and follow the component order. But generally few things are very strict. For example, you make first of all introduction, then make rationale, and after that accordingly you follow this all components. Next is understanding and making hypothesis. Very important, especially for quantitative study. Those researchers, those who are going to work in the field of quantitative study, please be very clear about types of hypothesis, what is hypothesis, and how you are going to make hypothesis out of your research idea, because it gives a clear clarity to the person concerned that these things you are going to actually test in your research. Next is methodology is the key to the execution of plans. I have mentioned it again, I am again coining in this concluding session that you should have a very clear cut idea that this kind of methodology I am going to utilize in my research so that I can have the desired results. Various type of tools in social science research. Interesting thing, there are many kinds of tools. There are many kinds of a tool that is used according to context and situation. For example, when you are going to do any kind of a survey research, generally we prefer questionnaire. When you are going for any first kind of observation, you prefer checklist, you prefer observation schedule. So there are many things that a researcher should understand, and it will actually enhance the quality of your research proposal. And last is understanding the appropriate intent of the component. This is very common for lecture number upcoming lecture and the previous lecture, that whenever we are discussing the component of the research proposal, very important thing is that please understand the appropriate intent of the component. Appropriate means what that particular content means and how you have to articulate it so that you can justify your research idea in a well planned and systematic manner. So this is all. Thank you so much.